We're in John 11, verses 28 through 57. I have one note of correction. I don't know what I was thinking. Chapter 11, verse 2 mentions Mary wiping Jesus' feet, which is a reference to John 12. I do know what I was thinking. Luke records a situation where it sounds identical to this, but it is a sinful woman wiping his feet. And I was blending those situations together. That's not what's happening here. But the account, and Kelly Castleberry mentioned this, the account of Matthew 26 and Mark 14 is the same as John 12. Okay? I wanted to make sure I clarified that because I definitely said that that was not the case in class on last Sunday. But I wanted to go back and make sure I clarified that. That was because, like I said, I was blending Luke's account into that, and Luke's account is different. Luke's is a separate account. But Matthew 26, Mark 14, and John 12 are all the same thing. And there are some things about that that make it somewhat difficult to kind of deduce and all that, but they are the same account. All right? Misty?
Is the Mary the one that you're talking about that was sinful? Is she the one that Jesus
Magdalene?
pulled all of the spirits out of?
Yeah, that was Mary Magdalene. There is some discussion. I don't think we'll ever be able to say with certainty, but there is some scholars who believe that Mary Magdalene is the same Mary here. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. And there's just some things in the text that would suggest that's not the case. But may never really know for sure. As we already know, Mary was a pretty common name. I mean, there's a lot of Marys in the New Testament. And by the way, that's also why Matthew 26, Mark 14, and John 12 are sometimes discussed as not the same event because Mark calls it the house of Simon the leper. Well, you know, John 12 doesn't actually tell us where they are. They just go to Lazarus, and then they meet up with Mary and Martha. You know, so it's not even really clear. Some scholars think that maybe Simon the leper was Lazarus, Martha, and Mary's father. And so maybe that's how that works together. But, you know, no way of really ever knowing, in my opinion. Okay? But I'm saying that at 10:08 on August 10th, 2025. You ask me tomorrow at 10:08, I may tell you different. Okay? All right. All right, well, we're in John 11, verse 28 and following. And before I get too far ahead of anything and everybody, let's go ahead and start with a word of prayer. And then we'll kind of set the context because we had singing night last Wednesday, and then we'll work on. So let's go to God in prayer. Father, we thank you for the blessings that you give to us. We thank you for our time of study this morning. We're thankful for the story of Lazarus that gives us such great confidence. Father, we ask that you would give us wisdom as we study your word and give us the courage to apply it in our lives. Help us to be faithful to you. Please be with our shepherds, Larry and Billy, and watch over them and their families. Father, we ask that you would continue to watch over all of us as we strive about this earth to be faithful to you. Give us strength, and we ask this in Christ's name. Amen. All right. So, kind of setting the context a little bit. John 11, Lazarus is dead, and like Rover, dead all over. He is gone. He is in the tomb. We're going to find out some more details about that. Verse 17, he's been in the tomb 4 days. That's going to come up again. Some discussion about Jesus and his disciples where they don't really understand what he's talking about. Surprise, surprise. That's been pretty consistent through John's gospel. He says something and they say, we don't know. They did that, blah, 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 we don't know sort of thing. And Jesus has to sort of correct them. One of the best things that comes out of this chapter is not just Lazarus' miracle, but it is the profession of faith from Martha in verse 27. Jesus reassures her. He's going to rise. And she says, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. That is profound, coming from this woman right in the middle of heartbreak and heartache and right on the cusp of what's going to happen, although she doesn't know that this is what's going to happen. By the way, you could probably connect this, we didn't on last Sunday, but you could probably connect Martha here to Mary in John 2. Jesus, at the wedding feast, Mary goes to Jesus and says, hey, they've run out of all the supplies here for the wedding. And she doesn't know what he's going to do, but she puts her confidence in him. And then he performs the first miracle in Cana of Galilee. So maybe there's a little of that going on here. Martha puts her confidence in Jesus, although she doesn't know what he's going to do. I mean, she's very much thinking the resurrection at the final day. And he says, no, it's more than that. It's a whole lot more than that. So that's a little bit of the context. Let's work here out of the text. Verse 28, please. John 11, verse 28. When she had said these things, she went her way and called Mary, her sister, secretly, saying, "The teacher has come and is calling for you." As soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came to him. Now Jesus had not yet come into the town, but was in the place where Martha met him. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and comforting her, when they saw that Mary rose up quickly and went out following her, saying, "She is going to the tomb to weep there." Then when Mary came where Jesus was and saw him, she fell down at his feet, saying to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died." Therefore when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who came with her also weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. And he said, "Where have you laid him?" Then they said to him, "Lord, come and see." Jesus wept. Then the Jews said, "See how he loved him." And some of them said, "Could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying?" All right. So she goes and tells her sister Mary that the teacher has come. You notice the teacher, that is a title. So maybe there's a little bit of that going on already. They view him to be somebody, the teacher. So he's calling for you. She very quickly gets up, goes to meet him. Verse 30, Jesus has not come all the way into town yet. And that's probably, I've shown this to you before. So here we have Jerusalem. We're working on Bethany. And you might recall that one of the issues is Jerusalem and Bethany are less than 2 miles away from each other, across the Kidron Valley, right over the hill from the Mount of Gethsemane. And so you talk about a really close to the city where everybody wants to kill Jesus. That's what the apostles noticed too in chapter 11, verse 11 through verse 16 basically. That wait a minute now, we go up towards Jerusalem, we're going to get into the danger zone here where people want to kill you. And so, this is why. This is a big deal. So evidently Jesus kind of camps out just not far from Bethany, awaiting Martha to meet him. Now, look at verse 31. The Jews here, unspecified by the context later in this, probably Jews from Jerusalem, because verse 45, those are some Jews who are going back to the Pharisees. Well, that's going back to the Pharisees in Jerusalem. And so these are probably Jews from Jerusalem, from Bethany, that general area. They're comforting Mary, and they see her get up, and they follow her out saying, "Oh, she's going to weep at the tomb." Now I want to connect this. Verse 33, Jesus saw her weeping and saw the Jews weeping. In ancient first century Jewish practices, every Jewish family was expected to hire a professional mourner. Okay? And families that were very wealthy were expected to hire several professional mourners. And that may be very well what's going on here. The Jews all following her weeping, they're making commotion. This person must really have been respected. This person must really have been loved, because there's a lot of people crying for him. Okay? Maybe that's a little bit of what's going on here, although it doesn't specify in John's account. But historically speaking, that's what the first century Jews were doing. Okay, and so that's what the Jews coming in, they're comforting her. That's probably a little of that in verse 31. Now, verse 32, she comes to Jesus, fell down at his feet, and said, "Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died." I want to think about that for a second. What's significant about her falling down at Jesus' feet and or what she says to him? Somebody tell me, what's significant here?
He had the power.
Okay, so maybe an element of his power here. Okay, Jeff?
I don't know exactly where you're coming at it from, but it's significant in the fact that all these other Jews were with her. weeping.
Okay.
Obviously, she views him as the Lord, the confidence that she has
Okay.
in him.
Okay.
And that she's also kind of asking that question as to why weren't you?
Yeah. Okay. Okay. A little of a challenge there. Go ahead.
Recognizing divinity worship.
Okay. There is some possible divinity recognition here, falling at his feet. Here's what I want you to see in the context. She says the exact same thing her sister said. Did you notice that? You know, go back up to verse 21. Martha said to Jesus, Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. Verse 32, Mary says the exact same thing. Okay, that's not, while we can't make like tons of points from that, it is something to notice in the text. You know, it makes you wonder the excitement that the teacher was coming and the women running out to him. Makes you wonder how many times they said this to each other over the last 4 days. Because if Jesus had just been here, if the teacher had just been here, this would have been different. This would have been different. Maybe let's tie in something else here too. Once you see this, it's kind of fascinating. Every time Mary shows up in one of the Gospels, she is at Jesus' feet. So, Luke 10, verse 39, she's at Jesus' feet while Martha is rushing about the house. Here, John 11, verse 32, she's at Jesus' feet. And then John 12, verse 3, she's at Jesus' feet again. Every time we see Mary, she's at the feet of Christ. Once you see that, that's one of those really little cool things. That's all the Gospels too, by the way. I mean, that's Luke and John. Okay, it's not just John doing that. It's Luke and John complementing one another. So, at his feet, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. Expresses the same degree of heartache that Martha had. Expresses the same degree of confidence, although it's a shallow confidence. Just like Martha, if you'd been here, you could have prevented it. To say nothing of the fact that he could reverse it. Okay? But she's thinking, just like her sister, man, Jesus, if you'd been here, you could have stopped it. You could have prevented it. And now, look at verse 33. So Jesus saw her weeping. He saw the Jews with her weeping. He was groaned in the spirit and was troubled. Now, I want you to notice something. I'll draw this out of the text because it's not quite as obvious. Everything about this scene is horribly emotional. Okay? Look at this. Weeping, weeping, groaning, troubled. Verse 35, wept. Verse 38, groaning. Do you see this? All of these are severe emotions. And that's part of what's working. Verse 33, he sees her weeping, he sees them weeping, and in response to that, he groans in his spirit and was troubled. A lot of emotions. A lot of emotions. Now, what, my New King James says, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled. Somebody read differently.
He was deeply moved.
He was deeply moved. Is that New American Standard? Deeply moved. There is some ambiguity here in the text, but the idea is deeply moved. The idea is really emotional here. He is stirred up. Now here's the thing though. This could be positive or negative, depending on the context. And I won't really fight you either way on this because it's really just not clear. There's a sense in which Jesus could have just been really moved by all this. There's also a sense in which he could kind of be ticked about all this. Okay? Now you say, where do you get the idea of him being ticked in this text? Ticked in this text. Come on now. So, some of it is kind of almost, one writer made the observation, just the subtle notion of unbelief here. Can I go back to that idea? Martha and Mary both saying, Lord, if you'd been here, you could have stopped it. Guys, that doesn't grasp who Jesus really is. Jesus is not just one who stops death. Jesus is one who reverses death. Didn't he already say that? In John 5, the dead will hear my voice and raise. Oh, man. It's not just that He can prevent it, it's that He can stop it and reverse it. So, I want you to notice verse 33. He's groaned in the spirit. He was troubled. Verse 34, where have you laid him? They said, Lord, come and see. Notice that again. By the way, that just hit me right now reading this. Come and see. That's a big motif in John's Gospel. Don't ask me how I missed that prepping here, but whatever. Come and see. Come and see. And then verse 35, Jesus wept. The Jews said, see how he loved him. All right. You know, there's just a lot of questions about that. Why is he weeping here? You know, is he weeping because he's angry? Is he weeping because he really is heartbroken about this? And I want to say this. We need to be really careful about speculating because the text doesn't say. You understand that? The text does not explicitly say. There are, generally speaking, situations where we say, that seems the most plausible here. But we can't be dogmatic about it because the text doesn't say. I'll give this just a second here. Why do you think Jesus is weeping in this text? Go ahead, Jeff.
To me, he is showing the human emotion. He
Okay.
loves them. It states that from the very beginning. These are people that he deeply cares about.
Yeah.
He sees how troubled they are.
Okay.
And it's sad, and it's a
Yeah.
human emotion.
Yeah.
And we may even find ourselves in that situation where even though he knows what the outcome is going to be,
Okay.
in that moment to see them that troubled.
Okay.
So it could just be the human side.
Okay, so I mean, we need to recognize the divinity and humanity of Jesus, and maybe there is some of his humanity coming to the surface here in that. I mean, he was truly God and truly man. You put your mind around that, okay, you know, whatever. You're better than I am, I'll just tell you right now, okay? Because that's one of the great mysteries of the faith. He's truly God and truly man. And I think, you know, once in a while we do like doing this. We'll take a text, we'll say, look, it's humanity. I'm with you, but at the same time, he's human. He's human, and yet at the same time, God. Now, I will say this. I love the idea, but not just limiting it to his humanity. I was double-checking to make sure I didn't have this point later. One of the big points that comes out of this, I don't know if he's angry. I don't know if he's just upset emotionally or whatever, but you know what one big point that comes out of this, regardless of the drive behind the emotion is? Our world and our lives affect our God. You want to take that one home, put it in your pocket? That's worth keeping, okay? Here's a situation. There's a lot of heartbreak, a lot of heartache. Maybe he's mad that they're unbelief here. Maybe he is heartbroken with him. You ever been in a room with a bunch of people crying? I didn't even know this guy. You know, I'm at a funeral. I don't even know this person. And I'm like, he was a good guy, you know? Yeah, it happens. There is that element here. Go ahead.
From the hindsight, I'd say indignation towards sin.
Mm.
You know, when you look at that aspect in death itself.
Oh, yeah.
Sin and death.
Yeah, one of the big ones that hit me when I first started studying years ago, really digging into texts like this, the element at this where we read it and we jump to the emotional aspect of all things. But what if, to Dallas's point, what if he's looking at this in the big eternal concept? This wasn't part of the design. Lazarus shouldn't have died. Death is a result of sin. The world experiences this heartbreak and heartache because they rejected God in the beginning. And what if there's some of that going on here? I mean, we're looking at this like, oh man, here's a fella taken before his time. You know, it's just so sad. And then, you know, Jesus is God, eternal. What if he's looking at it from the standpoint of, had Adam and Eve not sinned, this wouldn't have even happened. We wouldn't have needed all of this. You know, maybe there's something to that. Misty?
I've always thought of it as the empathy side of him, like just seeing all of them being so upset that it moved him to be upset. And I also wondered about, really thinking about it, this was like, what, like maybe a week before the crucifixion?
Mm-hmm.
And him,
Yeah, we're getting close.
And him seeing all of them, how upset that they were, knowing how heartbroken they were going to be in just a few days with him gone.
Yeah, maybe there is some of that empathy there. I mean, you have to put your mind around it somewhere that our God is just simply moved by us. Much like a parent watching a child, do we get heartbroken when we're watching our children? You bet we do. Maybe there's some of that going on here. Let's work ahead a little bit in the text. They say, verse 36, oh, see how he loved them. And then, the same point that's been weaving through this text, verse 37, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also have kept this man from dying? They verbalize exactly what Mary and Martha were just thinking. Lord, if you'd been here, our brother would not have died. Oh, man. He could, he's opening the eyes of the blind. He could have prevented this. Oh, man. You talk about short-selling Jesus. So, he says, verse 38, John says, then Jesus again, groaning in himself, came to the tomb. It was a cave, and a stone lay against it. Jesus said, take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time there's a stench, for he has been dead 4 days. Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Then they took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying, and Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me, and I know that you always hear me, but because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me. And when he had said these things, he cried with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped with a cloth. Jesus said to them, loose him and let him go. Oh, man. I'm telling you, if that doesn't just light your fire, I don't know what will. That's awesome. So he groans in himself again. He comes to the tomb, and just the same as verse 33, and we're not sure what's going on here. Is he groaning out of anger? Is he groaning out of emotion? Whatever it is, just not real sure. There's a cave tomb. That would suggest Lazarus' family is wealthy. Okay? By the way, we're getting a little subtle nod here that Jesus is going to go into a tomb just like this in a few chapters, guys. Okay? So here we get a cave. A wealthy Jew could afford a cave. Okay? Bury in that. Stone lay against it. This is a big elaborate thing. He says, take away the stone. Martha interjects, wait a minute now. He's been dead 4 days. Now, here's the thing. Anybody worked around livestock knows what death looks like after 4 days. When we ran a lot of stocker cattle, you expected a 2% death loss, which means if you had 1,000 calves on your place, 2% of them are going to die. And if you had a really bad winter or a really bad outbreak of something, you might even get a 3.5% death loss. Yeah, start doing the math on that. I hauled a lot of dead cattle away during different times. Okay, we had a 5% death loss off one truck one time because there was some contagious cattle on that truck. So you start talking about what this looks like. Oh, Martha says, wait a minute, Lord, 4 days. That's not going to smell so pretty. And in their mind, what are they thinking? Well, he just wants to see the body. He just wants to see the body. It's part of his closure, perhaps. No. He reminds her, verse 40, did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? Jesus connects what he's about to do here with the glory of God. Now, maybe there's a point to be made here. Jesus, on several occasions, talks about the cross as his glorification. You understand, folks, Jesus looks at events from from heaven's perspective, not human perspective. So he looks at the cross, and what we see is agony, pain, bloodshed, awful. And what he sees is glorification. He sees the Father's will being done, and he sees going back to the Father. Okay, so he sees it through the lens of heaven, and so he calls this the glory of God. They take away the stone, and guys, how many times does the word dead pop up here? Did y'all catch that? Verse 39, the man who was dead, he has been dead 4 days. Verse 41, took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying. I mean, what's John trying to get us to see? He's not sort of dead. He's not mostly dead. He's all dead. Okay? I said it. He's like Rover, dead all over. He is not coming back. He's gone. No bueno. He stinks. 4 days in the tomb. That's where we are. Now, John's pretty explicit. The dead man, the dead man, the dead man, the dead man. And so Jesus then says this prayer in verse 41 and 42, expressing this to the Father. And now here's what's so fascinating about this. He does all of this where they can hear him. What does the charlatan do? The charlatan whispers. You know, you whisper, you don't have to defend what you're saying. If you whisper, you know, they didn't hear you say it. So if it doesn't happen, doesn't come to pass, you kind of protected yourself. What does Jesus do? He lifts up his eyes and he says it where they can hear it. I know, verse 42, that you always hear me. But because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe you sent me. What's the big drive in John's Gospel? Jesus was sent by the Father. And so, part of that's weaving right through here. Verse 43, he says, cries out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. One writer made the poetic observation that had Jesus not specified Lazarus by name, every tomb would have emptied. Oh, I like that. It's poetic, but man, I like that. Jesus walks up to the tomb. I mean, guys, can you just imagine this? Jesus walks up to the tomb. I mean, maybe the stone rolls back and they haven't entered it yet, but is that smell coming out perhaps? You know, or does the wall stay shut, the door stay shut until he says, Lazarus, come? What in the world's happening here? But Jesus cries out, Lazarus, come forth. And a dude comes hobbling out in grave clothes. It does not get any cooler than that. The man, verse 44, he who had died. You see it again? He who had died came out bound, hand and foot, with grave clothes. His face was wrapped with a cloth. Follow my voice, Lazarus. Follow my voice. Follow my... Nope, little to your left. Little to your left. Don't hit that rock. Follow my voice. Follow my voice. I mean, is that not just absolutely incredible? So Jesus then says, loose him and let him go. Oh, man. You know, there's a lot you could make of all of that. Preached a sermon years ago. Come forth, verse 43. Come forth. There are some implications from this scene that are transcendent of the gospel itself. Jesus came forth from the Father. That's John's gospel, isn't it? Okay? One sent by God. That's Jesus. Jesus came forth from God. Jesus walks up to the tomb of a dead man and says, come forth. And he comes out of the grave. Jesus ascends to the glory. But one day he will return and say, come forth. And all those will meet him in the air. I mean, guys, we're a microcosm of the whole Bible story right here. Okay? The dead can be called back to life by Jesus Christ. Did everybody see that? The dead can have life through Jesus. Isn't that what Jesus said? I am the resurrection and the life. Not only can he reverse it, he can prevent it. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that, guys. And that's Jesus Christ. All right. Questions on that section right there? I mean, I know there's some fruit left in the patch. Go ahead, Peter.
I just want to know, hadn't he raised a couple people from the dead already? Like the little boy who was...
Yeah, so there is some discussion about the chronology of some of this. I mean, you do have like the widow of Nain, Luke 7. You have some of those events, but probably more than anything, those were kind of isolated away from Jerusalem. So you think about how this fits geographically. If Jesus is doing a lot of miracles up here kind of privately, not really telling a lot of folks, he's doing some pretty incredible things. That's why people are coming to him. But raising the dead, he's not done a ton of that yet. But down here, a little different story. Okay? But that's really, that gets us into some of the chronology of some of that, and that's just really hard to nail down with precision. Misty?
I've always thought it's interesting that the Bible keeps what happens after death secret. Like all these times where he's raised somebody, you think about Lazarus, well, where did he go? And they'd be like, oh, sorry, you got to go back.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it doesn't tell us, like the little girl that was raised, well, or like the one that gets me the most is at the crucifixion where it said the tombs were open and many, that believed were, it's just like, okay, well, did they ever go back? Where did they, so I've always thought that was so
They
interesting.
did go back. They did go back, Misty. There are no zombies. No zombies. Pop culture, but no zombies. No zombies. They all went back to the tomb.
It keeps it so secret. And
Yeah.
I always thought that was interesting, that we never get the perspective of the person that died coming back.
Yeah. Here's what's fascinating, and I'm not going to forget you, Dallas. Here's what's fascinating about this. You talk about a powerful evidence in the first century world. You get up and tell a bunch of people, hey, a man named Lazarus living in Bethany was raised from the dead. You could go interview Lazarus in Bethany. You understand that? You want to say, Devan, how did the gospel go so far in the first century? How was it so effective? Because people could go verify it. People could literally walk around the city where Jesus came back from the dead. They could go to the tomb that was empty. A lot of big things here. And let me also say this. You say, okay, Lazarus, maybe the young girl, other people who were raised from the dead. One thing you need to all kind of see to come together is, even if they were raised from the dead, they eventually went back to the tomb. I've always wondered if Lazarus went back to the same tomb. I already paid for this one. I'll just go ahead and use it. But here's the thing. They definitely went back to the tomb because what Jesus is, 1 Corinthians 15, is the first fruit of the ones who come back from the grave, never to die again. So what makes Jesus' resurrection so important is he raises from the dead and he doesn't die. Lazarus dies again. The young girl dies again. Dorcas dies again. All these people that were raised, they still go back to the tomb. Jesus didn't. Dallas, go ahead.
I think I was going to answer something that was mentioned about, how come, he did all these up there and they didn't know about it down there. I think when you take a look at John, and you look at John chapter 7, his brothers kind of give you an indication of that. He was doing everything in Galilee and it was somewhat secret.
Yeah.
They even encouraged him, why don't you go to Jerusalem?
Yeah.
Why are you doing all this? If you want to be known, go to Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And I think he mentioned all that because John touches on it over and over again. His hour had not yet come.
Yeah.
He knows the predetermined plan of God.
Sure.
And he is not, and he's doing everything. He's doing what God would do in order to ensure that
Yeah.
cross, and he's hanging on it.
Yeah. And you also have to keep in mind, there is careful instigation in the work of Jesus. He knows that what he's going to do is instigate problems. Okay? Now, it's going to incite belief in a select few, but it's also going to basically cause them to kill him. The big catalyst for that, to Peter's question, was raising Lazarus so close to Jerusalem. We're going to read that. That's the next text, actually, is how this fits with them deciding to kill Jesus and it being for sure now. Been a lot of things so far in all four Gospels where they go, we kind of hate this guy. Wonder if we could get rid of him. How could we get rid of him? And then John's Gospel comes in and says, hey, he raised Lazarus, and that lit a fire in his enemies. His enemies then said, okay, we're going to kill him. We're going to ASAP. We're going to kill him. Okay? Go ahead.
Yeah, in verse 40, when Jesus said, did I not tell you that if you believed that you would see the glory of God? Martha and Mary, I always saw it as there's a huge difference between unbelief and human understanding or the lack thereof. To comprehend that he could raise a man from the dead.
Yeah.
To comprehend that, especially at that time, or even now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
If any reasonably prudent person were there, what would that level of understanding be?
Yeah.
That's the way I always saw it, but 40 kind of levels that out and says, when he prays, Jesus prays and lets everybody hear him, so that they're grasping that understanding of how he is able to do this.
Yeah.
That's the way I correlate.
Yeah, well, and I don't want you to think I'm being too hard on these ladies. We made the observation back up in verse 22 when Martha speaks to Jesus. She says that I know that even now, whatever you ask of God, God will give you. That's paving the way for the prayer in verse 41, 42. Okay? So I'm not sure that it would necessarily be the unbelief of Mary and Martha as much as, to Joe's point, trying to figure this thing out. Because them being people from Bethany, they might not have seen some of the stuff Jesus did up north. Okay? Might have heard about it, but to Thomas's point in John's Gospel, there's a big difference between hearing it done and seeing it done. Okay? And so you maybe get some of that out of this text too. Notice verse 45 and following. Verse 45. Then many of the Jews who had come to Mary and had seen the things Jesus did believed in him. But some of them went their way to the Pharisees and told them the things Jesus did. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered a council and said, what shall we do? For this man works many signs. If we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and nation. And one of them, Caiaphas, being high priest that year, said to them, "You know nothing at all, nor do you consider that it is expedient for us that one man should die for the people, and not that the whole nation should perish." And this he did not say on his own authority, but being high priest that year, he prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for that nation only, but also that he would gather together in one the children of God who were scattered abroad. Then from that day on they plotted to put him to death. Therefore Jesus no longer walked openly among the Jews, but went from there into the country near the wilderness to a city called Ephraim, and there remained with his disciples. And the Passover of the Jews was near, and many went from the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. Then they sought Jesus and spoke among themselves as they stood in the temple, "What do you think, that he will not come to the feast?" Now both the chief priests and the Pharisees had given a command that if anyone knew where he was, he should report it, that they might seize him. So here's a big summary of what John's gospel has been putting out the whole time. Some believe, some do not. And those who do not believe take that information to the Pharisees, those who oppose Jesus, and what the Pharisees do is gather a council with the chief priests and start figuring out, what can we do? Now, chief priests would be part of the Sadducees, okay, because the priestly household was predominantly Sadducean. And so you get basically a council here. This is the Sanhedrin council, okay, which is why they're talking about how can we get this man killed? How can we get rid of him? We want him gone, okay? Now that's part of what works here. Notice something in verse 47. They cannot deny what?
Miracles.
His miracles. I made the observation a few weeks ago, not one time does Jesus' enemies in the Gospels anywhere say, he's not really doing this. Not one time. That's pretty powerful evidence to the truthfulness of these claims. Not one time. You know, you want to defraud somebody, figure out he's a charlatan, now go tell everybody and make it make sense. They can't do that. They can't deny the things he's doing, the signs he worked. Now the concern is in verse 48, if we don't do something, the Romans are going to come and take away our place in our nation. Our place is our political standing, our position, maybe even on the council, whatever. Here's the thing, though. The irony is the Romans do come in and take away everything from them. The Romans come in 66 through 70 in the Jewish wars, and they destroy Jerusalem. I mean, lay it ransacked, destroy the temple. It's gone. Okay? No bueno anymore. And so, yeah, that's exactly what happens. Now, Caiaphas, verse 49 and following, speaks. He says, basically, one man should die so that the people don't have to. Now, what John does is, verse 51 tells us, he's saying this not on his own authority. This isn't Caiaphas going, I'm the high priest, and so I'm going to speak. Nope. He's saying something here, and I don't think he's overcome with the Holy Spirit or something like that, but he is saying something God is going to use. Okay? And so Jesus would die for the nation, verse 52, not just for the nation either, but so that he would gather in one the children of God. Remember where John's gospel begins, guys. John 1. Not everyone will come to him. He comes to his own and they reject him, but those who want to be the children of God, they can. They can. Those who come to Jesus. And so, you get a little of that right here. Now, verse 53 and following, now they're working hard to get Jesus. They want him gone. And so he no longer walks openly. He slips out to the countryside, to Ephraim. You can kind of see it up here. This is probably where it is, up north of the city, up north of Jerusalem. They're good, still working. Up north the northern Judean area. He's waiting his time because he's going to come back into the city for Passover. Okay? And the Jews are going to work to catch him. So they, verse 56, they're asking among themselves, is he going to come in? They challenge everybody in verse 57. If you see him, report it. We want to seize him. All of that. It's pretty straightforward. That's going to pave our way. Chapter 12, verse 1 starts 6 days before the Passover. So we're in the final week in John 12, verse 1 and following. All right, questions on any of that right there? The kind of went through that pretty quickly, but it's fairly straightforward. All right, let's work on some applications here then. We got about 5 minutes. I'm going to give you a couple of those minutes. What do we got? How can we put this into action?
Never underestimate the power of the Lord.
Well, that's pretty good. Underestimate. I promise I spell. I spell better with spell check, though. Little known fact. All right, so never underestimate the Lord. You know, whether Mary and Martha do have some unbelief here or whatever, clearly other people in the scene have unbelief, and so now you have a situation where Jesus is being shortchanged. He's got a whole lot more up his sleeve. Okay? Never underestimate the Lord. What's maybe one more?
God is in control.
God is in control. Do this. You know, pretty incredible. All the Gospels really stress this. You know, who can calm the winds and the seas? The same one who can raise a man from the dead. Ooh, man, that's just pretty awesome. All right? Another one just really itching. All right. So let me give you some of mine here. Number one, faith doesn't remove pain, but it lessens it. And I'm thinking not just verses 31 and 32, okay, where Mary is overwhelmed here and falling at Jesus' feet. I'm thinking also of Martha earlier in the text. So, guys, you know, we need to really give that some thought. Sometimes individuals will say, you know, I have faith, and it's almost like, well, that means I won't ever have heartbreak, or I won't ever have affliction. No. Who told you that? Scripture didn't. You can have faith. It is compatible with heartache. Faith is compatible with pain. And what faith actually does is lessens it ever so slightly. In some cases, it lessens it greatly. And in all cases, it helps us live through it. Faith helps us live through pain. Okay? Number two, big difference between the real deal and fakes. And I'm not sure Jesus has ever been called the real deal before in a Bible class, but I'm doing it now. Okay? So he's the real deal. He goes to the tomb, a man who's been dead 4 days, and John is so clear. The dead man, the dead man, the dead man, the one who was dead, the one who is dead, laying there. You know, explicit. Dead, 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 dead. And Jesus, very much so, speaks out where everyone can hear him. I'm praying to you, Father, so that they all believe. And then he goes to the tomb and says, Lazarus, come forth. Guys, you can't fake stuff like that. What does the charlatan do? Lazarus, come forth. Oh, it didn't work. Nobody heard me. Oh, it's okay. No. Jesus throws it out there so that people can hear. Big difference. Number three, some believe, some do note. Let's fix that real quick. Some do not. Here, I'll do this. Exclamation point. Fixed it really good. So some do not. And I want you to know something. They all saw the same thing. Once in a while, brethren, we get the idea that if we could just sit down with somebody and show them just the right passage, we'd change their mind. Guys, some people don't want their minds changed. Some people, they're looking at the same passage of Scripture that you are. You believe it. They don't. That's not a reflection of the text either. That's not a reflection of the authenticity of the text. It's a reflection of a heart unwilling to see. We need to kind of come to terms with that. Many believed, verse 45, but some did not, verse 46. Okay? Number four, fear can drive people deeper into sin. Chief priests, Pharisees, unwilling to see Jesus, unwilling to see that He's the Messiah. And what do? Oh, we'll fix this. We'll kill Him. It's exactly what fear does. Fear drives us to a place where we will make worse decisions. Like one old ranch hand used to tell me, we'll make the worser decision. Because there was worse and then worser. I'm going to use that word more. It's a good one. And then number five. God works through people, good and bad, to see His will done. Y'all seeing that in this text? Here's people who want to kill Jesus. And God's going to use it for His purposes. That's how good our God is. Okay? All right. I appreciate y'all's attention. Y'all really helped me with some of your points and comments. So hope that was helpful for you. We'll jump into chapter 12 on Wednesday.